Bitcoin itself is the best savings technology ever created, and that ability to save is get us back to building on civilization where we left off fiat over 100 years ago. Bitcoins don't need politicians, but politicians will need Bitcoin. Bitcoin fixes the weaknesses of gold. That is, it's weightless and easy to store, and it's also much more transactional. You send it across time and space in milliseconds. You can actually have your own bank account, but better than that, you actually are your own bank, and that is thanks to Bitcoin. With Aqua Wallet, we made it a great way to show that Bitcoin is more than just a savings technology. It's also transactional as well. I mean, more than a transactional technology, because that's what it said in the white paper, peer-to-peer electronic cash. We're trying to differentiate that, you can hold on to Bitcoin as a savings account, but you can also transact with it or layer 2 sidechain liquid.
G'day, ladies and gentlemen. Today, joining me is a very special guest. We welcome Prince Philip of Serbia. Prince Philip, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Good day, Sean. Good to be here. I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. It's been a grand and glorious day. I know it's not early morning, but early morning over there. So thanks for jumping up and getting this. Prince Philip, I know you spent like a long time in traditional finance. I believe it was about 13 years. Primarily, was it in quantitative asset management?
Correct. That was not the 13 years, but let's say the last nine of those 13 years was spent predominantly in a team that managed quantitative equities. We were doing factor investing.
So you've gone from like hardcore traditional finance to Bitcoin, but not only Bitcoin, you're working with Jan3, Samson Mow, everybody knows, and you're going around the world advocating for Bitcoin and talking to nation states and trying to orange pill nation states. Number one, thank you so much. That's incredible. But I guess the question, what was that transition like, and what's the difference between those two career paths, I guess?
Yeah, it's a big difference. But, at the end of the day, a job is a job, and that's the most important thing is as Bitcoiners, we understand that proof of work is important, and being busy and working and sacrificing yourself for a better future is still apparent in traditional finance as well. There's a lot of people there that are have that long-term view. Of course, it's a little bit more fiat, much more fiat than we like. But really, yeah, there's a big difference in terms of other ideologies, really, in terms of being open-minded to other issues around the world. And that's one thing that in finance, there's that article that you read that I don't know if you've read, by Jesse Myers, like why the yuppie don't understand Bitcoin. And that's an issue that it's not that I was trying to promote Bitcoin when I was in traditional finance. It's just if something like Bitcoin comes about, or any alternative, let's say, topics come about in that space, yeah, it's not digested very well. And when in the Bitcoin world, I think it's great that a lot of us are open to new ideas and new suggestions and stuff, but also going back to our roots, going back to our what we've lost over the last, let's say, 100 years, and that is that spirit of that grounding spirit of family values, of tradition, of continuity, and sacrificing for the future, really. And this is something that fiat's eroded from our lives in so many ways. And I think that one of the best things about working at Jan3 is meeting so many wonderful people around the world, Bitcoiners alike, but also having the opportunity to speak to many individuals around the world about the benefits of Bitcoin. And we speak to them about how Bitcoin can help them and help. I mean, if I speak to a high-level politician, we can tell them how Bitcoin can help the people that they're assigned to into that position to help. So Bitcoins don't need politicians, but politicians will need Bitcoin. And this is something that's becoming more and more true, that it's something that's not ever going to go away, and it's only building. The network is only growing stronger and stronger, and there's so much to Bitcoin that people that I'm always learning about all the time. That Bitcoin itself is the best savings technology ever created, and that ability to save is get us back to building on civilization where we left off from the start of fiat over 100 years ago. And the ability to save was completely taken away when money became arbitrarily printed away by people in centralized powers. And now we have the ability to save and to look forward to the future and lower our time preference for a better future. So yeah, there's that. There's a savings technology that we try and promote as a strategic reserve or so forth, but also the monetary as a medium of exchange, but also the mining side of it is really interesting as well. And that's something that we're going to try and get started at Jan3, is trying to get more nation states or make some private public partnerships happening where we can use the benefits of mining to improve some network, electrical grid network in any part of the world. Like, for example, here in Serbia, we have an issue with coal, but we're still burning coal for our power, for electricity. I mean, a good portion of electricity, the mix it comes from coal, but that creates a huge amount of pollution. Not that I'm very against coal, but we have an issue that we don't have the right filtration system in a lot of these coal plants at all. So if we use their excess energy in these coal plants to mine Bitcoin, that can create some money to then put down a down payment for a filtration system, and that will reduce the pollution in the area. So there's so much advantages to mining Bitcoin, also as a way to further renewable energy, which is all the rage right now. But obviously the right type of renewable energy, one that actually creates baseload energy, and I'm talking mainly about either hydro or geothermal. Solar and wind I'm not so keen about, and I'm sure that many other Bitcoiners are on the same mindset about that. But you can use geothermal to bootstrap you can use Bitcoin mining to bootstrap a geothermal project, which doesn't really which requires a lot of capital investment to start to get the project going. And in our short-term mindset of the fiat mindset, people are not really willing to put down that money to get a geothermal project happening. But if you couple it with Bitcoin mining, then you can get the project happening. So I'm looking at areas, speaking to experts in the region, talk about how geothermal is mapped out over here, and if we can see if we can find the right places to mine Bitcoin. So there's a lot of exciting things happening that Bitcoin can help us in many ways.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Like, just in regards to the power, Australia's gone like really push the renewable solar and wind. I believe we're the most energy abundant country in the world. If not, we're number 3. I could be mixing it up, but we're either number 1 or 3. So, like, theoretically, we should have the cheapest energy in the world, or the 3rd cheapest, but we have some of the most expensive energy. And I think a lot of this is with like renewable energy, solar and wind. And Australian politicians really don't like Bitcoin. We've seen that in the last week. But if the miners did come in, they could really subsidize it, build out the grid more, having a lot of like not rolling blackouts, but blackouts in Victoria and stuff, and just huge costs to the end user where it doesn't need to be that way. It's really amazing. Like, to be able to go around as a Prince Philip and be like, hey, I think you as a country, or you as a nation, or you as a politician should accept Bitcoin. I guess, how are you first like having the meeting with these people? How are you getting in contact? And then once you are in contact with them, is it just like a one and done conversation, or is it like ongoing relationship building? Do you fly? Do you see them? But like, really, how's this all begin? How do you get in contact with these key policymakers or people in positions of power?
I think this is a good question, because this lends itself to how Bitcoin works. Bitcoin is a bottom-up strategy. It's a grassroots movement, so to speak. But at Jan3, we have identified that there's a need for some top-down approach as well, because we're using people in authority, people in positions of power. We're trying to leverage them to then promote Bitcoin. So we're just trying to get meetings with any politicians possible, and that happens. Yes, it can happen through connections, high-level connections and stuff, which is a very much top-down approach. But that's always very difficult, because there's only a certain amount of connections that we have. But what's really happening out there, just like Bitcoin, is that the bottom-up decentralized approach is probably one of the most effective. So we actually depend a lot on Bitcoiners around the world who have some sort of connection to a politician, a minister, even a president or prime minister, and they will reach out to us, and hopefully we can form some sort of relationship and work on some strategy to try and get in the room with them in a meeting and try to orange pill them in some way or form by either telling them about Bitcoin as a strategic reserve, media of exchange, mining, or so forth. It's tough work, but I think it's very useful if we want to add more credibility with Bitcoin. I think, at the end of the day, you can't stop the train of Bitcoin. It's always going to grow, but we can definitely get more people on board and make sure that their savings are secured in the best savings technology ever created. And in order to do that, you're going to have to politicians give it some sort of credibility. And if we get a picture with a high-level politician, minister, president, with some big Bitcoiners like Samson Mow or myself or whoever, that's going to do some help in getting more people on board. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people onto as I said, the best savings technology in the world. We're trying to save people out of this fiat nightmare that's unfolding all the time.
Yeah, I love it. So a massive call out for everyone watching. If you know any politicians, presidents, people in positions of power,
royals,
connect them with Jan3, Samson Mow, Prince Philip here. I'll put a link below where you can do that. And I'd like to reflect those sentiments. Like last week, we had a senator here in Australia. You may have seen the news saying that you can't eat a Bitcoin.
I saw something. I didn't go into it, but I saw something about that.
Just real quick context, lightning round. I reached out to Senator Jared Rannick 9 months ago before the Australian election because the guy speaks a lot of sense on a lot of issues that Bitcoiners hold dear. He's pretty level-headed in a lot of things. Like politicians don't agree with everything. That's cool. Don't need to. But a lot of people have a lot of respect, trust for him and stuff. So I reached out with myself, two other prominent Australian Bitcoiners, a really prominent international Bitcoiner, that anyone that spent 5 minutes studying Bitcoin would want to speak to. And he started getting interested and talking about it. The election got called, so the meeting got delayed. Somebody put out a post and tagged him in it. And then he responded with, you can't eat a Bitcoin. Whole Bitcoin community jumped down his throat. Toxic Bitcoin maximalism, way out of control. It was pretty disgusting, some of the content. He's got his back up. I very much doubt he will ever take a second look at Bitcoin ever again. He didn't get reelected, so he's not going to be a sitting senator for much longer. And the point of me reaching out to him, whether he buys or not, I don't care. But to have people in positions of power that are at least just cool with Bitcoin, or some of them are like, hey, this is pretty interesting. It's better savings technology. That gives people permission that trust mainstream media, that trust politicians to start putting in their own study. So I say like all of that because like I understand the approach you take, and I think it's effective to be able to get there. Having the title as Prince Philip, does that help? Like, can you pull any strings to be able to get meetings with presidents and stuff? Can you, like a royal missive or something, can you be like, hey, this is Prince Philip, I'd like to have a meeting, and can you summon them, or like, how's that work?
That's the idea. Although I don't like using my title very often, I guess I'm a bit more modest when it comes down to these things. I've never liked to show off my title, but if it's going to help better mankind, I guess, humanity, then I'm happy to lend my title. And that does help to create some connections. But the sentiment of monarchy is not always the most welcoming all around the world. But in general, people are interested to meet a prince. And I got to use that, and since I've discovered Bitcoin, I will do what I can to further it. So yeah, it does help. It does help quite a lot.
I love that. I'm not sure if you're open and willing, and feel free to say no. I'm happy to cut this out. But But what's it like growing up with the title of prince, coming from royal blood, having like a very rich history?
We do have a very rich history. Because not only am I a prince from my father's side, my mother also comes from the Brazilian royal family. I'm also descendant of the last two emperors of Brazil, the only two emperors of Brazil, Pedro I and Pedro II. So I'm very much blue blood, like on both sides from my father and mother. But because I was born in exile, my father was born in exile in 1945 after the abolition of the monarchy in Serbia at the end of the Second World War. He was born in London. I was born in America. I have a twin brother. We were born near Washington D.C. near the swamp, and yeah. So my parents my parents were separated. My parents separated when I was about 2 years old. We then moved to Spain. We moved to London, and I've moved to London with my father, and so I've been living in outside of Serbia most of my life, living relatively normal life. Yes, sometimes with the prince title here and there, meeting the Serbian community, going around, going to some royal events, maybe a wedding here or some event where there's some royals there where my name gets used. It's they always had that feeling of being a royal, but never had the proper feeling. I mean, it's not like a proper, I guess, how to describe it, but because the monarchy is non-functioning in Serbia at the time, right now, even today, it's a different setup to, like, say, someone like Prince, like William or Harry, who were completely born into it and essentially couldn't get out of it. Well, maybe Harry's kind of gotten out of it, but that's another story. So yeah, but now I've over the years come to understand, and also thanks to Bitcoin, thanks to its ideology of low time preference, which is also the ideology of monarchy. Monarchy is about low time preference. That I saw a lot of synergies, and thanks to Bitcoin, it made me understand the need for, possibly the need for monarchy and its benefits, and that made me really come to understand why. Well, I moved back to Serbia in 2020 when I became a Bitcoin maximalist. I first bought Bitcoin in 2017, but it wasn't until 2020, 2021 when I actually fully understood it, after what happened with the COVID weird stuff that happened those years. That really, I moved back to Serbia to be close to my people. I moved back with my wife and my son, and my wife and I are working hard to try and bring up the image of our dynasty again. And there's a lot of sentiment for monarchy in our country. Maybe about 30% of the population would vote for it. Hands down, doesn't matter who would be king or not, but yeah, a good 30% will have the Karađorđević dynasty back without any question. And then maybe another 30-40% are indifferent, whether it be a republic or a monarchy, but with some good marketing, I'm sure that could be swayed. And then there's obviously maybe 10%, 15% of the population who are a little bit commie still, but that's or very Republican. But that's expected, and I mean that's growing in the West now. Like communism and socialism is really growing in the West, which is a bit kind of worrying. It's funny how both worlds have kind of swapped over. So yeah, my sense of duty has really grown over the last years, and I think that came. So I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but
I love it. Keep going.
That came when I met my wife to be back in about 10, 11 years ago, and then we married quite soon afterwards. We married, and then the year after that we had our son. And it's really when you get married and you start a family and you create that future that you really it starts to ground you. You start to really understand. You start to understand your parents more. You start to understand the struggles of life more. You start to understand the need to work. That you start to understand you become more conservative, I guess. And then you discover Bitcoin, and then you discover the low time preference ideology, and then you discover. Then I start going to the church more as well. Then we have our second child, and really it starts to grow, and that really lends itself nicely to monarchy, to understanding that a monarchy is about that continuation, about that long time horizon. Then I start picking up books like Democracy, The God That Failed by Hans Hermann Hoppe, understand that the benefits of having monarchy. Of course, he argues that, okay, democracy is the worst of two evils. Monarchy is the lesser of two evils, but the way forward is natural order. a system of natural order with no state at all. I mean, if we ever get to that point, I think we're many years away from that. But it's a very clever, it's a very well written book. And I actually had the opportunity to meet Hans-Hermann Hoppe a few weeks ago. He reached out to me because I think he heard me in some interview last year. So we were communicating. And, he believes as well, this is someone with the best, the best, I mean, the most prominent Austrian economist, living economist today, a student of Rothbard, who was a student of Mises, reaching out to me and saying that, he believes that the aristocracy should come back in a system of natural order, but led by aristocracy could help solve the issues of this fiat nightmare that we're living in. That was quite encouraging. So I'm looking forward to more conversations with him, especially after reading his book. So if you ever get the chance, actually, I have a copy of it back here. This book, Democracy, the God That Fell by Hans-Hermann Hoppe, is one to read. Idea that the monarchy is also like Bitcoin. There's two main synergies that stood out to me. That one is a low time preference, and a monarch has to take decisions that last for generations to come. If he makes a bad decision, it's not just him that bears that bad decision. It's his sons and his future sons and future generations of his family are going to bear that bad decision. So he has to make good judged decisions. Otherwise, he could completely ruin his lineage from then on. The other thing is that it's the need for strong private property rights. If a monarch taxes or takes too much away from his citizens, then again, he could question his position there, because if you take too much away from today, from the people today, you're not going to leave enough for your sons in the future as well. But if you take too much from your people today, people are going to revolt and you're going to be overthrown. And so it's in his interest for the people, for his subjects, so to speak, I hate to say that, subject, but citizens, to have the strongest private property rights. And that is something that lends very well to Bitcoin. So, I'm thinking that a system of a monarchy under a Bitcoin standard could be quite beneficial. Yeah, some Bitcoiners will argue, but that's not really lending itself to natural order. But I think, no, we need to have some sense of tradition, something that holds us together. Not only the church, but another, because the church it lends itself to pushing the ideas of family values. But when it comes to practice, the church doesn't create family. It's there to protect it. But the monarchy is a family in itself, is that example of that continuity family. That's why it can lend itself quite well. And it has functioned for many centuries before, that the church and monarchy go hand in hand in that way. And I think the missing ingredient was Bitcoin.
That's so interesting, Prince Philip. I can just imagine firstly, I've got a week on the island coming up from tomorrow, so I'll be downloading and reading the book Democracy, the God That Failed.
It's a heavy read, careful. It's about 13 chapters. Each of them are like standalone chapters, essays that he wrote, but he put them together in a good order, so you can read them individually. But yeah, it's a heavy read, because, sorry to go off on one, but he wrote the book in his second language, which is English, because obviously it has a wider audience. But because he wrote it in English, he had to try harder. Therefore, more effort went into it. So that's why it's not only killer in terms of content, but in terms of language as well. But you really have to focus, because one sentence is like a paragraph.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll see how it goes. It's meant to be a week to decompress and de-stress, but we'll see. It's what I live for, reading the books, so that we don't need to eat the bugs. Mm-hmm. It's the tagline for this channel. Read the books or eat the bugs.
I like that.
It's man, I'm afraid of the WEF and the agenda. But coming back to the monarchy versus democracy, Prince Philip. Some people listening to this, and like even it'd come in my thoughts, like with monarchy, I've never lived under a monarchy, know very little about it, but it sounds like there's either the king or the queen, they're in power, they rule over their subjects, and like it could maybe be, and like I want you to push back. I know this is
Sure, sure.
incorrect and not true, but it could almost be like there's one person in power, absolute rule, almost dictator rule, whereas with democracy, everyone elects the representatives or whatever, and then we've got all these people in a democracy fighting for the people. I know it doesn't actually happen like that in a democracy. We're moving towards massive amounts of control in Australia. So I don't agree with what I just said, but I can imagine people think that. How would you maybe explain it
We'll start with
to someone that has...
So a lot of people, I'm not advocating exactly for an absolute monarchy. And there's many forms of monarchy. You can have an absolute monarchy, you can have a semi-absolute, you can have a semi-constitutional, constitutional. I'm not going to go into what they are exactly, but some of them are more closely linked to democracy, and some of them are become just absolute monarchies, which is just you have one ruler over their subjects. And this is the case for for example, some of the Arab countries, some of them like I think Oman and maybe Qatar and Saudi Arabia are absolute monarchies. Some of them are semi-absolute and some of them semi-constitutional. I believe like Jordan is semi-constitutional. So anyway, so there's the criticism that an absolute monarch is the same as a dictator, which I can see the similarities because we have one person in power. There's no elections, and that's the way it goes. But the dictator has no interest in the long term. He hasn't got to that position in a sense the way that the monarch has gotten to that position. The monarch has gotten to that position because he did something heroic. He did something like that lends himself to being key in getting the people together to I'm not very good at putting my words together here, but in
like rally them, like he's done something heroic and he's earned their respect.
He's earned their respect, exactly, which kind of also people say that happens with dictators as well. But the dictators don't have succession, and people don't really call for dictators to have succession. Whereas the monarchy, the succession is very important because the succession is what lends itself to not for the dictate for the monarch not taking, as I said, to advocate for strong individual private property rights. Because without the strong private property rights, then you don't have a peaceful society. You have a society that's going to self-destruct at any given moment, and this is the case for many dictatorships. And you can see dictatorships don't last, whereas monarchies last. Most of them have last. A lot of them have lasted a test of time. Yes, of course, after the First World War, there was a big push for republicanism, and the monarchies were taken away. But you question, why did that happen? Why were monarchies taken away? Because the New World Order did not lend itself well to monarchy. The New World Order wanted to have democracies in place because democracies are easier to influence than a monarchy. A monarchy has stronger respect for its subjects, and it's less likely to be open to any sort of outside influence. And you can see what's happening right now in most parts of Europe, where they have very developed democracies, that they have a huge influx of immigrants, and are at the whims of these massive corporations that are leading their discussions and stuff. And that's not right. That's not correct. This is destroying the very fabric of their nationality, and people's patriotism has been eroded. And then, as a result, you get nasty forms of nationalism rising and stuff. And not that I'm against nationalism. I think there's a difference between nationalism and patriotism. I think patriotism is a healthy form of nationalism, but I see a lot of good patriots out there trying to fight for their countries, but these poor people have been labeled like far right, extreme, this and that, and for just wanting to protect their traditions, their customs, their religion, their people, their ethnicity. And if you talk like that, you're labeled some white supremacist or far right, this and that, and that's really ugly. What we come to that, and that's happened under democratic rule. how to describe it. Like Hopper would describe it that democracy is like a publicly owned. It's a publicly owned government, and that incentivizes short-term exploitation over long-term stewardship, leading to societal decay. You again get issues like rising crime, declining moral standards, growing public debt, and where basically elected officials prioritize immediate gains to win votes rather than sustainable policies. Whereas the monarchy incentive structure it's not ideal, but it's much better than the democratic structure, I would say, and it lends better to Bitcoin ideology. That if the government is privately owned, it has vested interest in the nation's wealth for themselves and for their heirs, and it sort of fosters prudent long-term governments. With democratic leaders that with their temporary powers, they lack such incentives and they often just try and squander resources while they're in office. So they're trying to grab as much as they can when they're in office, and they're trying to then get themselves voted back in, and promising people by printing money, they promise people things to get voted in. And this is why, Bitcoin will actually help to improve democracies. And I'm not saying that democracies is going to fail, but we're seeing that democracies are failing. And that's why a need for a Bitcoin standard is very much beneficial, because when you couple democracy with central banking and with too much centralization, then it's going to be taking charge of people who have only their short-term interests in mind. And this is why we're seeing all the issues that we have today. But I think that's why, Bitcoin can also fix monarchies down shortfalls as well. So Bitcoin can actually fix a lot. And of course, Bitcoin lends itself better to a more natural order of anarcho-capitalism, which is always purely based on private property, like free markets and voluntary cooperation. But how to say that this voluntary form of cooperation has to have some glue that holds it together, and we can't just be there like willy-nilly free to just do what we want and stuff like that, which is great. That's what we're advocates. We're freedom fighters over here. But that we need that conservatism to hold us together, and to advocate for strong family values, and that's what the church and the monarchy helps in doing. But of course, if you take the power away from the church and the monarchy to control the money, then you've got yourself a much better, more beneficial system.
One thing that you said in there is like Bitcoin can fix this, whether it's the monarchy or democracy. But as someone that's going around and having these conversations with nation states, and not just like nation states, but individuals, the plebs, retail, Wall Street would call us dumb money, whatever it is, just like the everyday person that's out there, but that hasn't yet bought Bitcoin. What do you reckon like the biggest barriers are? Is it technical? Is it educational? Is it due to the political system? Is it due to democracy and getting all this free money and people thinking that they're going to be taken care of by the government in retirement with their pension or their superannuation or whatever? Like, is it life just too easy for some people, or like what do you think's stopping like a mass wake up to the best form of money that's ever existed?
That's a big question. That's what we're all trying to figure out, and how to improve our orange pilling pitch. It's a tough one.
I just wish there was a switch where you could be like, Bitcoin, you're turned on, let's go next.
But I do this. I try and think about how I understood what was the when looking back in the last few years, how did I become a Bitcoiner? What decisions or what things I read, what case studies, what articles, what actions, everything led to me understanding Bitcoin more and more. And I try and use these examples as well going forwards to maybe model that on someone that maybe with not similar mindset, but similar, let's say, in similar education, similar careers. And it sometimes does help. So like when I talk about to people who are monarchists, I talk about the private property and I talk about low time preference. Low time preference is one that can easily picked up on. But thing is, when you talk about low time preference, the actual words that use low time preference is something that people don't really know about. They are more in tune to maybe understanding that you talk about low time preference, you talk about sacrificing for your children. And I think when a lot of monarchists are actually quite closely linked to the church, and you talk about church, you talk about their benefits, and you talk about monarchy, and you understand that. So you understand that you then tell them about Bitcoin's low time preference ideologies. So they can pick up on that. About private property, that's something that not everyone is fully aware of, because of that was really eroded over the last 100 years, is our understanding of the need of strong private property rights. And this is a thing, when I speak to some monarchists, they understand the need for continuity of the family values and things like that. But there's like, what is fundamental? What actually creates the family values? What actually creates the continuity? What actually creates you being able to provide for generations to come? And that is that you need to have something that is able to hold that you'll be able to hold something that's not going to be eroded or taken away from you. And that is what private property rights is. And that's what Bitcoin lends itself so well to. So civilization is born from strong private property rights. And I'll keep on repeating it. I mean, that when you have savers in a community and able to save and hoard money in the good sense of the word, hoarding money, not in the fiat sense of the word, Scrooge McDuck style hoarding, but actually hoarding and building their wealth, that will then lower their time preference, and that will then give them the ability to then provide for themselves, for their family, and for their community, and they can reinvest their money into the community. And then in turn lowers the time preference of all other people in their area, in their community as well. And then that creates ripple effects all across the whole country. And this is how civilization is born. That's, if without that private property rights there, I don't know how civilizations can actually progress. But when you teach to someone about that, then they start to switch, then they start to maybe listen. But then when you try and include Bitcoin into it, it's always very difficult. Because Bitcoin has that, even though it's the hardest money in the world, it's difficult to explain to someone how it's hard because you can't hold it. But then you say to them, okay, well then how about that? Okay, Bitcoin, how are we meant to progress? How are we meant to improve from the gold standard if without the internet, without the technologies at hand? Bitcoin fixes the weaknesses of gold. That is, it's weightless and easy to store, and it's also and it's also much more transactional. You can send it across time and space in milliseconds. How are you meant to solve that? Because every time you have a gold standard, that will then lead to someone having to hold it for you, because you can't hold so much gold yourself, because it's a security risk, and then that lends itself to the naughty business of giving out more receipts than there are gold, the weight of gold, and that leads to the fiat, and then you take away the gold, and all that sort of naughty business. Bitcoin fixes that, and you try and explain that to someone, that how gold itself, the gold treasuries created fractional reserve banking, and Bitcoin takes that away. I mean, Bitcoin takes away fractional reserve banking. You actually are your own bank and stuff. And this is something that a lot of people can't really grasp very easily. And it took me a little bit of time to grasp, but maybe we're just lucky, us Bitcoiners, because the other thing is, number goes up is helpful. That's how I first got into it in 2017. It was my best friend in London. He was like, "Hey, Philip, you know about Bitcoin?" I was like, "Yeah, well, it's going to go up. It's going up. You buy some. It's a good investment. It's good inflation hedge." He said. I was like, "Well, inflation wasn't an issue for me back then, for many of us." But he says, "Yeah, it could be the future of money and stuff." And that was his words. And then I bought it, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to go up." I got it in the beginning of 2017, and lo and behold, of course, it went up. I was like, "Wow, this is amazing. I'm going to make loads of money." But then I got distracted by the other shit coins and everything. Didn't really focus on it too much. But that helps. Is the numbers go up does help. But then how do you tell people that it's just Bitcoin that matters and not the rest? Because it wasn't until about 3 years later that I understood it was just about Bitcoin. And had I held all the other shit coins on to today, I would have had, they all went to zero pretty much. Well, are about to go to zero, some of them.
Yeah, I came through shitcoins to Bitcoin. I'm grateful I understood Bitcoin enough to know that it was like a new form of money within 2 weeks. But I still thought like the shitcoins were this technological play or like amazing, new, interesting thing. For yourself, Prince Philip, what was like the moment or the wake up call or the light bulb where you're like, oh, shitcoins are actually shitcoins and Bitcoin's the thing to be able to focus on and not worry with that distraction?
Yeah, so I said about that. What decisions in my head led to that understanding? There's a few things I would say. Number one, going onto Bitcoin Twitter. I said quit Twitter. The signing. I had some dormant account Bitcoin. Twitter account, X account now. Sorry, that I logged back into, and I started following some Bitcoiners, but also some crypto people. But I saw Bitcoiners doing their toxic thing, and I was like, "Oh, that's fun," and making a lot of sense. And they made a lot of sense. So I picked up on that quite quickly. But other things that led to me was picking up the Bitcoin standard that helped. What really cemented it was, even though by the end of 2020 I'd pretty much made up my mind. It was like convinced. Then in 2021, when China tried to ban Bitcoin mining, when they had 60% of the hash rate in China and they banned it, and then I saw the effects of antifragility, that when all those machines went offline and that downward difficulty adjustment, and then how it just sparked up the more decentralization. That was like, wow, that's beautiful. And I thought to myself, yeah, that's here, it's here to stay. And like that, I had the hair standing up on me on my arms and stuff. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And I try and tell people that as well. And the difficulty adjustment is something that actually is quite beautiful. It's one of the inventions of Bitcoin that make it really special, because a lot of the things, most of the things that make Bitcoin are previous inventions that have been around for a few years. But one of the glues that keep it together is the difficulty adjustment. And it's similar to how in the Keynesian fiat world, that interest rate is how we currently deal with overheated or underheated markets. But that's just interventionism, and that just leads to the distortion of price signals and to the destruction of to more. Basically, yeah, it leads to more intervention, just leads to more socialism at the end of the day. And Bitcoin is actually no.
I love it.
Whereas Bitcoin with its difficulty adjustment is like, yeah, if you have too many machines mining, then you're just there's this clever thing that just happens every 2 weeks, then the difficulty gets adjusted. So you have the blocks always spaced out 10 minutes more or less over time. And if there's less machines mining Bitcoin, there's less energy, then you're going to have a downward adjustment. It's beautiful. And that then means that more people will be able to be priced back in, and so be able to turn on machines around the world. So you just have constant people wanting to mine and get onto the Bitcoin network all over the world. And then, okay, then it becomes too expensive here. But then you find that then drives people to incentivize people to find new energy sources. So it drives the energy market as well. It drives energy. It's an energy revolution as well, which is, I would say revolution. It's an energy renaissance as well. Not only a monetary renaissance, but an energy renaissance. It's absolutely beautiful.
Amen. I love how passionate and like that difficulty adjustment within Bitcoin. It's so poetic. Like just TikTok next block. Bitcoin doesn't care. It keeps going, self-regulates, self-adjusts. And I loved that, Prince Philip, where you said like the alternative is the interest rates. And it's like there's this code there's a machine or whatever that runs by code and it's just baked in and it'll look after itself. Or we've got politicians or the treasurer flicking the switch on and off, but really like how they feel instead of off data or fudged data at the end of the day. But like being so bullish, looking, say, 10, 15, 20 years ahead, what would success look like to you personally, but like also to Jan3 and then to Bitcoin, to the world?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think in 10, 15 years, what I would like to see is what the mission of Jan3 is to bank the billions that are unbanked around the world. And a lot of people around the world don't have bank accounts. And I would say not because banks are being nefarious. I'd say because banks, it's a bit of a cost for them to be set up all over the world. It's difficult to set up a branch in the middle of the countryside, whatever. So people have to hold paper, have to go travel miles to access an account and stuff. But now you can actually have your own bank account, but better than that, you actually are your own bank, and that is thanks to Bitcoin. So you just need to have not even a smartphone. You can actually do it off an old one of those like Nokia style phones, whatever you call them.
A brick.
Yeah, a brick, which I like to get actually right now. I mean, I've kind of had enough of smartphones.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
better for our mental health.
But no, but smartphones have maybe just a smartphone that has a Bitcoin wallet and that's it really. But yeah, that we would like to see in 10, 15 years. I would like to see a lot of the global population that are unbanked, and I think thanks to technology, thanks to Bitcoin as the technology that's going to bank so many people around the world, and that's what we're doing at Jan3, thanks to the Aqua wallet. So yes, I talked about Jan3 having the top-down approach of trying to get politicians and ministers and people on board to help their people understand Bitcoin, and we use them to market Bitcoin and give it credibility. But Bitcoin is a bottom-up strategy; it's a grassroots effort, and one of our bottom-up tools is Aqua Wallet, which was released a year and a half ago, and it's becoming one of the I've got to say it's the best, probably the best wallet out there, because it's proving to be it's what's going to be a go-to wallet for everything Bitcoin, and Aqua exists to make Bitcoin accessible, usable, and powerful for anyone, anywhere. And that's our mission. So we're going to be doing this. We've done so. I don't know if you have had the opportunity to have Aqua download Aqua and check it out.
I was just going to say, mate, it's my go-to hot wallet.
Okay, fantastic. So
it's absolutely incredible. It's amazing. I think you can speak to it more, but what I really like is people can take control of their keys. Yeah. And what I really like about it is when I'm teaching someone about Bitcoin or trying to orange pill them, I'm like, hey, download this wallet. They do it. And then I'll get them in there and I'll get them to download their keys, or like I open it in and then write down their seed phrase. And then I'll send them some money. I'm like, keep those words safe. And then I'll just delete the app.
Yes.
Off their phone. And they're like, what? I'm like, oh, your Bitcoin's gone now. Delete the app. Like, what's going on here? I'm like, no, just put in those 12 words again. And they're like, oh, wow. It's there. I'm like, that's how Bitcoin works. And it's pretty much the same thing for cold storage, but it's just a simple way. I'm like, that's as hard as Bitcoin needs to be, and you control it. Yeah, you could lose your phone, keep the words, as long as they're on like titanium, not paper or steel. Anything's better than paper. It's amazing. Like, it's one of my go-to orange pills, along with Beers for Bitcoin and the Big Print. They're like my three tools, man.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's really good to hear. No, that's great. To add to what you said, I think firstly what you said, that's actually another way to orange peel people, is to just get their hands dirty, get them holding Bitcoin. Okay, you can't hold Bitcoin, but get them on their phone.
You can't eat it.
You can't eat it. No, you can't eat it. No, that's hilarious. Get them just trying it out. You get them to download a wallet, and of course teach them that you need to secure your wallet to download your private keys and to store those. But that's a really good practice as well, is to delete the wallet and then to use their words, their private keys to load it back in, and then for their money to reappear. Get them to transfer out Bitcoin, and you transfer them some sats as well. It's just seeing that happen is a way of telling people how easy it is. And that's why Aqua Wallet is such a good wallet to show that, because with Aqua Wallet, we made it really a great way to show that Bitcoin is more than just a savings technology. It's also transactional as well. I mean, more than a transactional technology, because that's what it said in the white paper, peer-to-peer electronic cash. But we're trying to differentiate that, we can hold on to Bitcoin as a savings account, but you can also transact with it on using Lightning or layer 2 sidechain Liquid. But when you open the wallet and you have the wallet in your looking at the wallet, you have the first line, the number one line, is a savings account, and in the number two line you'll have your spending account, which is Bitcoin in Liquid, wrapped by Liquid, which then opens up Lightning channels, and that's what your day-to-day transaction is. But we also have Tether, USDT Tether, which has many advantages, because Tether is, how to describe, it's a stable coin that mimics the price that follows the price of the dollar. And we see the ideology is that not the ideology, sorry, the reality is that in Latin America right now, for example, Tether is used, USDT is used much more than Bitcoin as a transactional currency. And so we need to use that to our advantage. Why is USDT used so much in Latin America? Because in Latin America, many people want to have exposure to the dollar. They've lived under dollar dominance for many, many years. So getting the actual dollars, physical dollars in cash is very difficult for them. Getting digital dollars in accounts is also difficult for them. But one thing that they can get their hands on is USDT Tether. So we're going to use that to our advantage. But better, we're going to make sure that it's purely on Bitcoin rails, meaning that the Tether that we have, most of the Tether out there right now is on some shitcoin rails like Tron or ERC20, which is Ethereum and some other stuff. And that's going to fail in the future. But we want to make sure it works on USDT, you work on Liquid, or maybe through Lightning. So we make it that on our wallet, that when you use Tether, USDT Tether, it's on Bitcoin Liquid, but we made it even easier. So you can actually transfer from any shitcoin sidechain, and it will appear on your wallet on Liquid, on Bitcoin Liquid. So it's a way of siphoning off any Tether on shitcoins and making sure it's backed by Bitcoin.
Just speaking to that, like I've seen some of the pushback. Why are you supporting the shitcoin UST and stuff like that? Personally, I wouldn't hold it, but there's plenty of people around the world where their dollars or their local currency is so bad, and Bitcoin may be just a little bit step too far. So to be able to have that option, and for that option to be running on Bitcoin rails, total respect, and I appreciate that you've given people the optionality. But what I really like is they can instantly, or not instantly, but very quickly swap that Tether into Bitcoin.
Yes.
And they can earn Tether, and they can just save little bits.
That's the thing. That's why we make it. Sorry, in the wallet face, you'll see that spending account, and then above we'll have savings account. Then we will have the marketplace where we can do swaps from your spending account, so from Bitcoin Liquid, or from Tether, and you can then transfer it back into Bitcoin on main chain. And when you do that, that's one way of actually orange pinning people, because they'll be using they have about 400 million Tether users globally. We want to make sure those guys understand Bitcoin. And if they have Bitcoin on their screen and no other shitcoins, just Bitcoin, they'll hopefully start to understand. They will start maybe transferring some over to their Bitcoin savings account, and they'll see that grow over the years. And that's one way to get more people on board.
I absolutely love that. And another thing with the app as well is the Bitcoin price is like so predominantly at the top.
Yes, of course.
As well, which is great. Prince Philip, we're coming to the end of our hour. I just want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart on behalf of the community for fighting for what's right. I think is a better form of money for people to be able to opt into, and taking that to a nation state level. I'd like to hand the floor over to yourself if you've got a final thought, maybe something the audience might find of interest, or just something that's top of mind. The floor is all yours. But thank you so much for your time today, Prince Philip.
Thank you very much, Sean. I would just say, like, the opportunity to thank people like yourself, amazing Bitcoiners around the world who are just doing such great work trying to spread the message of Bitcoin, whether it be toxic or non-toxic. I think both have their advantages. And I think it's fantastic that there's finally this beautiful movement that's happening with a lot of passionate people, not always agreeing with each other, but that's the beauty of it, because you can't always be under the same agreement. So that's how progress happens. And we have to discuss things. That's the real scientific method, I guess, when it comes down to it. And when I travel the world and I go to conferences and I try and meet politicians and stuff, and then meeting local Bitcoiners, it's amazing. And we have so many similarities and common ideals and stuff, but also there's many other new things I learned from Bitcoiners around the world as well. And I just big shout outs to the community. They always test. I'm always being tested by them. My thirst of knowledge has always been quenched by their ability to provide more and more things, interesting things to learn about, interesting books, podcasts, documentaries, or whatever, and just talking to people. And it's a beautiful time to be alive. We're at the cusp of this transition from the fiat nightmare that we've all been living over for the last 100 years, hopefully into something better and more sustainable, and everything that we talk about. So it's a really exciting time to be alive, that we're here at the transition of that.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's definitely a bright orange future.
It is.
Prince Philip, once again, thank you so much. For everyone watching, I've linked Prince Philip's details below, as well as Jan3. If you'd like to hear more from Prince Philip, two amazing podcasts I can highly recommend is Preston Pish and Prince Philip. Just search for that on YouTube. Or Adam Hudson, the recent one you did with Adam Hudson from Unemployable Media. A lot of fun, very different conversation to both myself and the one with Preston Pish. But follow along, connect with Prince Philip on X as well. Thank you again for your time. For everyone out there, please do something nice for yourself today and for somebody else. Be blessed. Peace.